We're live on the Feel Inspired podcast. Everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Episode 51. It's been a couple of weeks since I came live. All my guests have just dropped out on me. I think everyone's so busy at the moment. Now that life has opened up again, everyone's getting very busy doing their thing. So it's good to be back. Got a good lineup of guests, and it's wonderful to have Barry back as well. Barry came on, I think it was episode 39. I think it was. I can't remember now. But we wanted to, I can't remember either now, actually, to be honest. But we wanted to carry on where we left off and also delve into this kind of whole topic about masculine and feminine. And I'm on TikTok a lot, Barry. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of people talking about the subject. It's something I'm quite passionate about as well. So I really quite fascinated to get your take on this as well. But just as a reminder, everyone, Feel Inspired podcast by yours truly, Amit Sodha. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've got any questions during the course of the podcast, feel free to post it in the comments. I should see it on screen. Or if we don't get to it, do not worry. We will come back to any questions later on as well. But we'll try and answer as many as we can. But I think this topic is quite fascinating at the moment, especially with the hot topic of genders. And, there's kind of an advent of the last few years of these multiple genders and how we handle this subject, but understand what our roles still are. So for me, I think masculine and energy is a lot to do with how that energy is expressed in action. And so I think we are beings of duality. We all have masculine and feminine within. The chances are, if you're in a male body, you could have a predominantly masculine energy, and if you're in a female body, you could have predominantly feminine energy, or vice versa. And vice versa, it could go either way. But I think it's an important area to discuss, to understand. And I was talking about this with someone, Barry, because someone was asking me to potentially do a TED talk. So we're talking about this, and I think that part of the challenge we face is that with dating in general is that people have forgotten, or because there is no longer a clear indication of what role people take in the dating process. And so that's kind of left everyone in limbo, and hence causing much of the problems that people face. So, and we're also probably going to talk a little bit about, of course, what happened over the weekend, exciting stuff as well. Yeah. But welcome again, Barry. Is a and of course, ladies and gentlemen, my nickname for Barry White. The soul voice of the dating world. It's just incredible. I love it. I'm just here to listen to him speak. I love a gushing teenager.
Excuse me.
So let us start. So first off, Barry, what's your kind of take on this whole subject of masculine versus feminine? What does it even mean? Does it mean anything at all?
Well, let me first start by explaining how I was exposed to, or I should say, deepen into what masculinity was. Because I grew up, first of all, my dad was very stoic, English, reserved, held back, suppressed, and Jewish family too. So it wasn't very expressive. So my role model of my father was someone who didn't express emotions. I felt too much emotion to be able to match that. And so I only saw the other choice I could be is be the macho guy like my dad was, or be the passive nice guy, which is what I did for many years in my dating life, which was passable but not great. And for most of my dating life until 15 years ago, I didn't know it was a third choice. And what happened was after the third breakup in a row, the same sort of pattern showed up with my partner. She confronted me because she wanted a macho guy. And I was going, but there's got to be another choice. I can't do that because the nice guy, the passive guy that was the passenger, wasn't working at all. Right? The girlfriends hated it ultimately. They liked it initially because I was nice to them. I took care of them. But then I became not very effective. So then 2007, after that bad breakup, I said, okay, God, give me a client, give me a clue, show me a sign, something. What am I missing? And in March of that year, I frankly bumped into this amazing woman who led me to these teachings about masculine and feminine polarity. And I didn't hear that until I was in the actual introduction. When they said, this is what happens with men and women, and male and female, and masculine and feminine. I was like, say what? And it changed me, because when I saw that description and the way that I have taken in to describe it, because a lot of people conflate masculine with macho. And the difference between the two for me is very stark and very clear, which is why I'm so clear about this now. Machoism for me is really the ego-driven, like big balls, like my way, the highway, I'm taking charge and screw anybody else, which is kind of the bad boy, which is what really the macho in the most negative form is. That's the one that basically is the bully, pushes people around, takes what he wants and dominates, which is kind of what happened and when I was at school, I got bullied a lot by boys like that. The masculine, though, is someone who has an open heart because there's a lot of compassion for the world, and is also is driven by a legacy, want to give something to make a difference in the world, and a strong spine, because that strong spine is his guidance system. It's like a not a divining rod, but it's kind of like the directional system, because a man must have his purpose, a clarity of direction where he's going in life. So for me, the masculinity is about what he's up to in the world to make a difference, that also fulfills his heart and his soul. And those pieces together for me is what define masculinity, separate from machoism. And this term, by the way, I'm really getting tired of hearing people say toxic masculinity. I'm like, there's no such thing. And the reason why I say it is because masculinity itself isn't toxic. When people get into toxic behavior, men get into toxic behavior, for me, that's toxic machoism. Because toxicity comes from this egotistical againstness against other people, whether it's their spouse or society, whatever it is. And that's where the toxic comes from. So for me, there's masculinity and then toxic machoism. And I'm trying to tell the whole world about that one. So that's, for me, is the difference. And that's what I'm about.
I agree. You know, funny enough, I just shared the video to a group where I was having a debate with someone about this, and I said those very same words. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is toxic behaviors in people and individuals, but masculinity of itself. Because again, I want to get your take in this as well, because we have this notion of the sacred feminine. We have no notion of the sacred masculine, and I think that's wrong. I think we're teaching people wrong, and this is why there is a lot of, especially I'm seeing it in youngsters, these mental health challenges are a big part of this, because they're only seeing or being given one side of the equation and are not given the choice to balance themselves out or choose which qualities they enjoy, what they want to create themselves into be. So I think that we are sending a very bad message out there by just focusing on feminine, because that's not female specific, but we have got the sacred feminine, but we've also got the sacred masculine, and that is what's missing. Like you said, this toxic machoism, and I agree with that 100%. But for me, toxic masculinity is a absolute misnomer. It's like what's the word I'm looking for? You can't have those words, two words together. I've forgotten the word for that now. It's just you know, a contradiction in terms. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the thing, and yes, I agree with you. One problem, I believe, first of all, is that girls weren't deified or elevated for so long. So when femininity became I'll say the buzzword, but became the focus, divine femininity made sense, because it was time to honor and respect women. Because frankly, after the Me Too conversation started, 3-4 years ago, it's like people are waking up. It's like, oh, finally, people are finally getting the fact that women haven't been respected. It's like time to do that. On the other side, men have been running the show for so long. And on top of that, you know, boys have always been told, you know, man up, don't cry, don't be a wimp, don't be a sissy, step, you know, all that stuff that we've been trained in, especially, I don't know if it's much nowadays, but certainly when I was a kid, you know, you didn't show emotion. So men have been trained since boyhood to toughen up and hold it in. So when we talk about masculinity, it's kind of like, yeah, you've had your time. It's like, no, let's honor the feminine now. There's almost this putting down of men owning their sacredness that's not even honored yet, because it's time for the women first. It's almost like there's only room for one at a time. I mean, frankly, it needs to be both, you know, divine masculine, divine feminine, absolutely, because that's the balance. That's what creates a great connection and mutual respect. And so definitely with children, you know, the fact we're also being trained so much. I mean, I saw a video a couple of days ago talking about the fact that, you know, girls have pink toys, whereas boys have blue toys. And if you go down the different aisles, and I was watching a video of this guy who's actually a political pundit. He was talking, and he has this backdrop of all these things on shelves behind him, and he said, you know, there's a pink drone and a blue drone, like, you know, toys, the same toy, just different colors. One from the girls' aisle, one from the boys' aisle in the store. And it's like, we've made it so defined that girls have to be pink and boys have to be blue. And this is independent of sexual preference, by the way. I'm not talking about gay or straight, because masculine and feminine energy for me belongs in any relationship, male, gay or straight, because it's the polarity of those two that creates the attraction, which in gay relationships is just the same as it is in straight relationships, just different bodies. And so the fact that we have this entrainment of how boys should be and how girls should be, then as adults, we still carry that inside our history, inside our belief systems. It's almost in our bones at that point. So it becomes a problem, you know. And the thing for me, again, back to this piece about honoring what is true for ourselves. And as you said, we do carry both inside of ourselves. The way to define it's kind of like a spectrum. whereas masculine one end, feminine the other. And we reside somewhere on that spectrum depending on what our preference or innate nature is. So there are men occasionally who are more feminine based and more women who are more masculine based. But not generally speaking, men are on the masculine side of the spectrum, women on the feminine side. However, in daily life, we have to be in both ends, because when we're driving a car, being directional, it's more masculine, energetic. It doesn't matter what body type is driving the car. But then if we're playing with a puppy, or we're holding a baby, or we're doing something that's much more loving, heart-based, we tend to move more into our feminine nature, whether regardless again of the gender we're in. So know that we have both, and that we reside where we are, and none of it's wrong, except when we suppress it. At least my belief.
I love that. None of it's wrong until we suppress it. That's a brilliant quote. I think that's one to add to your Instagram. By the way, do follow Barry on Instagram as well. He does post some amazing content. And I think that's beautifully put, Barry. That's so beautifully put. I think, I don't know if you agree, or let me put it the next question in a slightly different way. Do you think, or what do you think are the ways that those energies are expressed to paint the picture, to give people a clear idea of what we're talking about and what those things can look like? How are those energies expressed?
Boy, I was thinking about who I think of as the celebrities or leaders that are seen can define the most. Let me think. Well, let's start with the feminine first. I would suggest that, frankly, Oprah is one of the best role models for the feminine energy, because the feminine is very much about collaboration, cooperation, connection, all the C words, bringing people in, which is what she does so magnificently. It's one of her natural gifts. Masculine energy, I think in role models, there are certain actors that demonstrate that, but of course, being actors, they can be putting on a face, may not be authentic. I mean, my first thought was to go and say that Barack Obama was probably one of the most masculine men in leadership of the country. Like, just contrast, for example, I'm going to say, I don't want to get political, except to say, comparing Barack Obama with Donald Trump, Barack Obama was more about service and about others than Donald Trump was. I can say that safely. Whereas, frankly, Donald Trump was much more about his ego. I mean, any speech he did always came back to himself. That is the macho mindset in its distilled form. And so that difference energetically, I mean, I'm not sure everyone can get that, but for me, I can definitely see the difference the way that Barack Obama was, how he was devoted to his wife, how he took care of his kids, and how he was devoted to service. Yes, he had ego stuff going on too. I'm not saying it's perfect, but as that was the majority of his energetic, that was what masculinity is about. Whereas machoism is more about what can I take? So give, take, kind of the different energetics in a sense.
Yeah, I like that. What's your take on? By the way, I was going to say one of my examples, like given a scenario like this, is Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I think he's kind of like the epitome of masculine energy. The warrior mindset, I think, is another way to put it. I don't know if you agree with that. It's the natural protector. The example I give to some people is that I'm not a violent person at all. Never have been, never really will be. I'm just not that type of character at all. However, if threatened in any way, shape, or form, in fact, not myself, even myself, actually, if I'm by myself and something happens to me, I'm approached by this big butch man who wants to mug me, I'll probably run like a screaming girl. However, something changes inside me if my wife is there, or I am there with someone that needs protecting. Then the Hulk emerges. I've actually been described like that as well. I've actually been described like that as well. I'll tell you a little funny story. Me and my friend were in a car once, and we saw someone getting attacked, and he was getting sort of mugged by these two guys. So we stopped to even the numbers, and the guy who was being mugged kind of just walked away, left us to it. So then it was a 2-on-2 situation, right? And I said to my friend, I said, "Look, let's not fight. No, not worth fighting. Let's just get in the car and drive." One of the guys punched my friend through the window, the car window, and he lost the play. He started fighting this one guy and got him to the ground, and all of that kind of stuff. I was still quite calm at this point. I was annoyed, but I was still quite calm. I said, "Look, it's not worth it. Not worth getting arrested over, beating the crap out of this poor guy. So let's just get in the car and leave." And then one of the other guy grabbed a can of beer and threw it through the car window, and it all smashed into my face and my friend's face. And that's when I lost it. I kind of got out of the car, literally turned into the Hulk, and I was like, "Go on, I'll take it." I mean, my friend actually he described it. He said, "You scared me there. You actually turned into the Hulk for a second." And I think that's kind of how I describe it a little bit. Part of it, not all of it, of course, just but one example.
Right.
Would you agree with that as well? With that kind of, do you think that's a fair definition? Do you think that's an accurate definition?
Well, the masculine definitely is a protective energy, because as much as the masculine is about serving and about legacy, there's a pride in doing that. There's a sense of ownership, a sense of making sure it gets delivered. So when you have a relationship or family, you're not going to be the bully, like protecting, like screw anybody else. It's more about if it's like we don't throw the first punch, so to speak, but we'll damn well finish it. That's kind of the energy.
Yeah, that's a good. I love that definition.
And same thing for me. I mean, so I was bullied in high school, and so violence has never been my preference. The pain of it on the receiving end, it really impressed on me over the years how much it doesn't work. And so I don't know yet, because I haven't been in a situation yet where I've had to be resorting to that. I trust if I need it, it will show up, but I don't practice it. I don't, I mean, part of me thinks I should learn martial arts, but I'm like, I haven't yet. And so far life's been okay. So, I mean, not to presume anything.
It's the attraction of the discipline, isn't it? I think that again is a masculine thing. It's the idea that you could, should the cause arise, should the need arise, that you would be ready to do something like that. And I think it's that base instinct, right? And again, I think it comes from when we were early modern man, woman, and our need was to protect. We wouldn't necessarily go out kill something, but if we had to protect what was around us, then that's where it comes from. That's that base instinct, that base energy. And I just wanted to call back to something you said earlier as well, because I really resonate with that. Because I was, when I was dating, so bringing this subject back to dating, when I was dating, I was also a very feminine male. And part of that was actually biology. My body wasn't producing its own testosterone. So I had to get medical intervention to correct that. And that medical intervention meant that it changed my personality. Whereas I was that very compassionate listener, became the friend to most women, which is why I never really got any dates when I was younger. And so that was pretty much always the outcome. And then when I started taking this medication, which was actually in about 2007, and it was about 2008 that I got into the whole dating thing, I started to learn what it meant to be an alpha male, kind of to take the lead, to actually be the decisive force. To, instead of saying to, and the way I describe it to some people is that instead of saying to a woman, for example, from my perspective, if I wanted to ask her out on a date, instead of saying to her, when would you like to go out? It's using terminology like, right, let's go out. You tell me when you're free, give me a couple of options, and let's go. And I'll take you to somewhere absolutely amazing that will blow your mind. It's that decisive force. It's that decision maker, the confidence as well, I think is another word that describes it well. So I think from a dating perspective, let's talk heterosexual for a second. If you're a man looking for a woman, these kinds of qualities, would you agree, are what make attraction happen? So this masculine energy, and women, I think, feel and pick up on this energy as well. They not only it's the through the actions, but through the energy as well. They feel someone who's like that, and that force for me is a very naturally attractive force to the feminine. True or false?
True, because underneath it is the fact that she can trust it.
Yeah.
The biggest problem, I think, for women is finding men who aren't committed to themselves, and so they don't present as a solid, firm, rock solid person they can lean on. Because what a woman really, I believe, what most women want in a partner, a male partner, is a man they can rely on, who's dependable, who keeps his commitments, who shows up, who, when they need him, they can basically collapse in his arms and he won't collapse under the weight, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking
Literally and proverbially.
Hopefully, yes, both. So, but and for us, what I think we want as a masculine man is a woman who will not so much stroke our ego, but certainly praise us and love us and honor us, so that we can stay strong in ourselves, so we know we're doing the right thing. Because that's what makes the relationship work. And yes, the confidence to determine, to ask, to make decisions is a masculine trait, absolutely. And again, we're talking about the energetics of masculine, because women have the ability to do that too. Just don't want to say they can't make decisions, because, however, when women are in the feminine, they don't care about decisions as much. They're more in the flow and the dance, and they're like, anything is great and everything's great. The way I would say describe it as well is that when it comes to driving to a destination, we focus as masculine men on the destination. Women generally enjoy the journey to get there. And it's that different energetics. And when we move into a feminine, we can do the same thing. And when women move into the masculine, they can be directional focused too. So understanding we have both, and we can play in that spectrum as we choose to. When it comes to dating, though, definitely if we're in traditional format, so to speak, the masculine is one that leads, that asks, that inquires, that decides, that offers the invitation to say, come do this. The feminine can also be in the place of playfulness. And to go to the dating piece that I'm talking about, in olden days when we had the handkerchief drop, that was one of those gifts that the feminine give because it was basically it was a flirt, and feminine is great at flirting. So she would basically let the masculine man know that, hey, I like you. What do you want to do about it? And so then say, pick up a handkerchief, give it back, and say, nice to meet you. Let's go out. So it's that sort of dance. And in modern times, we haven't had that as easily. There isn't really a modern equivalent of dropping the handkerchief, except that women, when they're on dating apps, and we get a whole conversation about scams and everything, but in just normal dating arena, she can say, I like you, or I'd love you to take me out, or even put that blunt invitation out there saying, you've got to do something about this, but I'm going to let you know it's okay if you do. And that gives him the space because a lot of men, we do a lot of rejection as part of the joys of being the man who asks women out. Yeah. And it's funny, like you, in my teen years being bullied in high school, I was much the nice guy that became the shoulder girls cried on. I spent most of my teenage years doing that and into early adulthood. So it had to shift for me as well. And this work has changed my own perspective, not in a completely different person, but now I understand how it works better. So I can be much more in my own truth when I'm speaking. So that piece you're talking about, that shift into leadership is, for a lot of men, needs to happen. And the problem is that some men have been told to push harder and push harder. It's like, no, it's still out of respect. We do lead, but we do it from a place of respect of the feminine. So when we say, let's go out, give me a couple of dates, and I'll pick somewhere great for us to go, that's out of service to her, not out of proving I'm good I am. And that's the difference.
I love that. Say that last bit again.
Well, when we offer to take them on a date, it's not to make us look good to her. It's to make her is to ideally help her feel better, that we're showing her that we care.
And I think that exactly what you just said there is where some challenges in relationships can come. It's the way that the obviously it's a dance between the masculine and feminine energy, whether it's the asking out, the moving forward, is the constant, it's the beautiful opposites. I mean, it's not always easy to put into words, but it's the dance of the beautiful opposites. It's that I'm always reminded of that scene in I don't know if you've ever seen that movie years ago, White Men Can't Jump.
Oh boy, I vaguely remember it. Yeah,
you might remember it. And there was a scene in there specifically which was quite poignant. I think it was, for me, one of the most poignant scenes in the film, actually, where she wakes up, the girlfriend wakes up in the middle of the night, and she says to her partner, she says, I'm thirsty. And so he gets up and walks to the bathroom and gets a glass of water. And she's like, what the hell is this? He goes, you said you're thirsty. You're supposed to, and she says, you're supposed to empathize with me. And he goes, but it's obviously just him trying to fix the problem. So the men want to fix, and the women just want the sympathy, the connection. I love that scene. I think it's such a classic. But there's this beautiful dance between the energies, but if you don't have an understanding of what those energies are and what the needs are, then this is where you encounter issues. This is where, I often say to women, right? So I obviously we're weighting this at the moment slightly towards the masculine, but I think it's an interesting subject to talk about right now. I give the example to women. I say to them, right, so for those of you who are in a heterosexual relationship, if you were, for example, getting ready for a big night out, you've really made an effort on yourself, you've done your hair, you've done your makeup, your nails, your clothes, and your outfit, you look in the mirror and you feel stunning. You walk downstairs and you kind of, waiting for your partner to say something, and they say, right, let's go. So they don't comment on all your effort, your appearance. And I say to them, how would you make that how would that make you feel? And they'll say, well, yeah, of course, I'm not doing it necessarily for them all the time, but it's nice to be acknowledged, of which it is. And I say to them, okay, so what's the reverse of this? Do you know? And I wait for an answer, and a lot of times women don't know. They don't know what the opposite end of that equation is, how men need to feel appreciated or respected or loved. And I think that this is also part of the challenge. I see a lot of videos on TikTok where guys are like, I don't get any appreciation for any of the things I do. Whereas if I don't give appreciation, I get
Yeah.
yelled at, screamed at, and and I've just had a long day at work, and that's all that happens to me. And I think that this is where there's a gap in people's knowledge about the subject and
Mhm.
being able to appreciate their counterpart energy. What do you think?
Absolutely true. I mean, one of the things, just to go backwards a little bit, when the talking about coming home from work piece, I want to speak to that for a moment, is when a man comes home from work or has been very, really busy, what he needs is time just to calm down and come back to his center. So if she's like in his face right when he walks in the door, he isn't present today. He's not functional. So the best thing she can do is let him take like 50 minutes, either read the newspaper, watch TV, something that's mindless, so he can come back to be present. And then when she talks to him, he can be responsive. Vice versa, when she comes back, she wants to dump out everything that happened during the day, unlike him. So ideally, make sure he's in a place where he can listen. Doesn't need to necessarily file it away, but at least be the receptive space, the whole space for her, so that she can feel seen, heard, and allow herself to vent it out to be free. So that difference in masculine and feminine is key as well. The other part as well that I'll talk about, which is, where I was. Oh, you're talking about when, like, for us as men, we are fix-it trained. We are problem solvers. That's our innate skill set. So when a woman is upset or hurt or needs something, we immediately go, what can I do to solve this? Most of the time, as you said from that movie piece, she doesn't need that, at least not until the end. So one of my favorite teachers, Alison Armstrong, talks about this. And she explained it this way, was saying that basically when a woman's upset, our best thing we can do is shut up and stay there. Because most men, when a woman's upset, will either run away, try to shut it down, or try to solve it.
Fix it, right? Yeah, big one.
And none of that works. What does work is to hold space, be like a lighthouse in a storm. Because frankly, when a woman's upset, we can feel it. It's sometimes like a storm we're facing. So when we can hold the space and be there for her, she can vent it out. And we can certainly be encouraging, inviting. Is there anything else? I hear what you're saying, or I appreciate you. Just simple words that don't fix anything, but just let her know it's okay. And when she's complete, when she's finished venting it out, she may then ask for help. Like, hey, what do I do about that? That's your opportunity to do something to fix it, but not until then. If we did that more and more, boy, women would be so much happier, first of all. And secondly, the biggest piece about this is we don't have to defend ourselves. Because 90% of the time when a woman's upset, it's everything's happened to her, of which 1% is us. So taking it personally when everything else, being responsible for all the things that happen to her aren't our fault, is really not worth it either. So when we can be that centeredness and then be responsive to what she needs, is the way through to have a healthy connection.
Yeah. But it's quite easy to do, isn't it? As a like, again, just talking heterosexually here for a second, as a bloke, if you're in a relationship with your partner, and you have those moments where she just needs to vent, and it's very hard sometimes not to do those two things: one, take it personally; two, want to fix it.
Yeah.
And what do you reckon guys should do in a situation like that? How does a guy evolve himself to the point where he is able to manage it much better, that when these events happen? Now, of course, I think the first step is always awareness, but
Yeah.
what does a guy do really?
Well, I was going to say it's practice, practice, practice. I mean, I'm grateful I had some great teachers, but I've been studying this part of my journey for the last 15 years. So I'm not saying it takes 15 years to learn, but just take that to heart, to simply be, entertain the possibility you don't need to fix it first. Like, yes, be aware. But secondly, what if you don't fix it? What happens? Is it going to be as bad as you think it is? It probably won't. But if you can get that far into the perception, and the third piece is hold your tongue.
Yeah.
You know, you got the urge to get in and jump in and say, I can fix this. I can look so good with her. That's the other part. I can look so good fixing your problem to her. But the thing is, you won't. You might think that, but again, because the masculine and feminine function differently. We think with a masculine brain, a woman, again, generally speaking, thinks with a feminine brain. So her need for solution is to be heard. His need for solution is resolution fixing.
Hmm.
So we've got to go in a way counterintuitive and say, don't do anything right now, just hold space. But it is a thing of right practice. Experiment with it, do it a few times, see what happens. Because I believe for 99% of the people out there, if they do that and don't react or fix or run away, they might actually see a change in their relationship. So it's really a matter of listening to what we just said and then practice it.
As you were speaking as well, a little thought just occurred to me as well. If you as a guy can say to yourself in your head when you're faced with a situation like that, the way for me to fix this is to listen. then that might help. Actually, that's a good little mantra to remember as well. The way for me to fix this is to listen. That is me fixing it, and it'll be hard to resist. Your hands just want to do something.
Sit in your hands. Yeah, sit in your hands.
Get a hammer, or a tool, anything. But yeah, no, I get that completely. I think it's. So then going back actually to the original point, what's the reverse of that then? So from a woman's perspective to a guy, when he's what is the opposite of that scenario I gave? When a woman comes down, waiting to be acknowledged, her beauty to be acknowledged, what's the opposite for a guy?
For a man is definitely to be appreciated. For her to say thank you, when he drives the home and he opens the door. I mean, I remember this one from years ago when women were fiercely independent. Would open doors for women and they wouldn't. It's like, I don't do it for a thanks. I do it because I respect women. And I've said this many times. Like, I don't think women are weak. I'm looking for acknowledgement. I'm doing it because I care and respect women that open the door for them. When they say thank you, that's like, I appreciate that. So it can be as simple as just saying thank you. It doesn't say thank you for anything particular. But like, for example, if she comes down the stairs and he does go, wow, you look amazing tonight. I'm so happy that you give me my arm when we go out tonight. She just says thank you for that. He's happy. He's complete. He doesn't need the equal opposite praise, but it's about the acknowledgement on both sides. I think I would suspect women love to be praised and prized for how much effort they put in, how they look, and the results they've created. To be blunt, we don't take as much time for ourselves to do that. I mean, if you have hair, you can comb it. But, I don't worry about that. But
not a lot there. Trust me, Barry.
But the thing is like we can put on clothes, be ready to go in like 5 minutes. So we don't necessarily need, although it's not bad to have female saying you look good. That can work. But the reality is we didn't put as much effort in as she did. So it's nice to be thanked, but basically it's really our pressure to appreciate her and to approve of what she's done. We don't mind it as much. Yes, we like approval for what we've been up to, what we're doing to create a safe place, to protect her, to make life good, to be that strong, solid, reliable person in her life. She can definitely being praised by that is a good thing too. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's your suggestion to people at the moment, the way things are going, the way dating is, the tools that we have, everything that's happening right now, all these videos I come across with, people on TikTok, social media saying all men are like this, all women are like this.
Right.
What's your biggest piece of advice to people who are struggling right now? Because they've had some bad experiences with the opposite gender or possibly the same gender as well, but just in general, people messing them around, not taking it seriously, poor with communication, just the, very, very lackluster in the way they conduct themselves via dating. What's your advice to people who are going through and feeling a little bit, run down by this process? Because that's a big question I get. I don't know if you get the same thing as well. So what's your biggest message to people who are going through something like that?
Well, it depends on their approach in the first place. First of all, if you're just on the dating apps trying to find somebody and you don't have a clear vision of what you want first, that's an error in approach. So know what you really want first, because most of the people who are running around or not committing, not showing up, aren't what you want anyway. So it's not about you not getting what you want. It's about you not knowing what you want. So not focusing on what you want first. Second thing, and this is part of what I do with my clients, is a lot of, I was talking about this a couple of days ago, that so many people go from relationship to relationship without doing the cleanup in between. And the way that I remember Barbara Angeles did a lecture, and this is going back probably 7-8 years ago now, that I went to. She created a company called Making Love Work, and she was John Gray's ex-wife many years ago. So she's in the same line. But she talks about this thing about when we're loving, it's like we have this lake or ocean of love that we have available. But when we get wounded in a relationship, or we have a heartbreak, or we get stood up, or things go badly, get rejected, we tend to create like slight icebergs on top of that water. We create a scar or a wound that is not healed. And so what happens is we slowly but surely keep adding to that pile of snow, that ice on top of the water. What it's doing is, because we haven't resolved it, we haven't healed it, we haven't dealt with what is up inside, we just knock it down. It's kind of like the amount of love we get to give gets smaller and smaller and smaller because the ice is covering the rest of it. So some people out there are walking around dating with about that much love they can give out because they haven't done the work to heal the past hurts. So no relationship is going to be worthy of that. And they're not going to be worthy of any relationship without doing the inner work. So I'm very passionate about people healing their inner wounds and the heartbreaks from past relationships, because people say, time heals all wounds. Well, physically, yes. Emotionally, no. Time numbs all emotional wounds, because as time goes by, you just don't remember them. So if you went through a bad divorce or breakup, or you really had a runaround, and I said from my experience, I went through 3 relationships in a row where the same thing happened, which is what put me on this path. I had done enough work beforehand to notice the fact there was 3 relationships doing the same thing. Most people don't realize that the relationship that just ended had a similar problem, issue, trait, the one that happened before that and the one before that. So take an honest look at your past. Look back at your 2020 hindsight, use that. And so you start to heal that baggage. When you do that and you know what you really want, then it starts shifting your focus. And the other part, the third part, I talk about 3 pieces, heal your past, clear what you want to do, and then deal with the relationship with yourself in the mirror. The challenge also is we're also looking out there to make ourselves feel better. So in the dating apps, we keep finding people who don't like us or approve us. Our self-esteem goes down because we think we're dependent upon that out there to make us feel better. But the reality is, when we start taking care of who we are, and I know self-love is a very trampled trope in the sense that we say, you got to be loving yourself. Well, yes, when you do self-forgiveness and you do the work to heal your wounds and you start to really appreciate who you are, then your standards increase. It improves. When you're on the dating apps, you're not worried about the number of people who say no. You're focused on the one that says yes. And that's the difference.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And it's so true. Yeah, you've got to focus on the one that says yes, not the ones that say no. And we have this weird thing in our brain where we get more attached to the ones that say no, and we want to know why. When people ask me, I need feedback. Why did you reject me? I'm like, this is not an interview. Just move on. It's okay. There's nothing that they can give you constructive to you. That can only come from yourself. And it's just, and sometimes it's just, you're not everyone's cup of tea. And that's the ultimate truth. And you've just got to be able to find a way to move on very quickly. I always say to people as well, I really hate the way we've stigmatized distraction in this day and age as well. And I think we've got some very healthy distractions out there as well. So, one of mine is badminton. I love playing badminton. It's a sport I love. I play Tuesday nights in my poker night with the boys. It's a very healthy distraction. I love it. And it just gives us a little bit of a break away from the day to day. And, and sometimes we all just need that to bounce back, to recover. It gives us a bit of a time to just stop thinking about it so that we can come back to it with a clean slate, rethink it, reevaluate, and then come back, try something different, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I think this has been quite a fascinating discussion so far on this whole idea of masculine and feminine. If anyone out there has got any questions as well for Barry or I, feel free to put them forward to us. More than happy to answer them as well, because I think that it's not a very well understood topic, in my opinion, and it's something that if we go away and try and learn and understand that we are comprised of this beautiful field of energy that has two like you said, two polar opposite, masculine and feminine, and all flavors, all manner of flavors in between. Right. And when we understand that each energy comes with its own, programming of actions and needs, and if we understand that, we can work with it, and we can understand our partners a lot better as well, and how to deal with them, and understanding we're not at the same energy at any given moment as well. We can all flex into either energy as well. We all have our moments as well. I think I'm at home. At home, my wife describes me as I'm the feminine of the household. I'm the guy who keeps, the towels really nicely leaned up. The toilet rolls are all have to be lined up, and going over the top, not underneath. All of those little things. I'm really OCD with the way the cutlery is put in the drawers. Whereas my wife just chucks it in there as well. I call her masculine in that sense. She calls me feminine. So yeah. But anyway,
I think order may be a masculine trait. I'm not sure.
You think?
Maybe I hadn't thought about it, because some people so.
I think I think you're sort of right, and I'm kind of still in two minds though as well, because it's like if you go to the military, right, you have to be really trained to put everything away like proper. It is, I think it is a bit of a masculine trait as well. But there's something, especially when it comes to anything in the kitchen. I know it's going to sound really sexist. Anything that comes in the kitchen, and then guys just chuck stuff in. Like, I don't know any other guy who does what I do. I really don't. So.
Well, for me, it's like I love cooking, especially during the pandemic. I got pretty good at some things, but my thing is though, because I'm genetic. I would say I'm naturally lazy, which is a masculine thing. So we want to get the task done so we can relax.
Yeah.
So the sooner we get things done, the better. So I clean as I go, so that when I'm finished cooking, I don't only clean that to do. It's like I've got one pan I'm finished, because everything else has been washed and put away. That for me is efficient. That's actually a very masculine thing.
Yeah.
Whereas when somebody else comes to the kitchen and just puts stuff in the sink, that to me is so messy. Where it's someone, and the thing is, in some ways, that's more feminine, because the feminine is more like enjoys everything and embraces everything, whereas we're more focused and disciplined. So it's different energetic. So
yeah,
I know we spend about hours debating which is more orderly, which is not, which is masculine, which is feminine.
All right. So, question for you then: 3 masculine traits expressed, 3 feminine traits expressed.
3 masculine traits. Focus and direction is one of the masculine traits. Results orientation, to getting things done, getting things complete. And stillness. One of the masculine gifts is stillness. What, again, I talked about earlier about being trustable. When a woman can rely upon a man who doesn't waver, that's a powerful masculine trait. So that stillness is part of that. So that's 3. Feminine traits, one of which is playfulness, to dance energetically. So dance movement, that sort of thing, is all feminine. The ability to connect and to really bring things together, that's one of the feminine traits. It's a gift, although some men can do it really well too, but it's kind of a feminine gift to connect. And the third one is really, I think, a lot of ways, is to be full of life, to embrace life itself. Because feminine is the fullness of life, whereas masculine is the emptiness and the void of death, in a way. So it's the polar opposite type thing, like yin and yang. That's
a beautiful way of putting it as well. So what's your take on what happened over the weekend?
Oh yes, we're going to get to this one, are we?
Yeah, it's got to be done.
The way I've termed it in my post on Facebook is the slap heard around the world.
Absolutely was.
Yeah, so let me break this down. I've had some big arguments about this with some people on social media, particularly on Facebook, although they've been on Instagram too. If you go to the tape, if you look at what happened, there was a joke that Chris Rock said from the stage that kept being interpreted. And the key thing is, interpret is the key, because Jada has apparently been public about her dealings with alopecia and her hair loss. But her hairstyles have changed so much over the last few years, maybe because of that, maybe because of her own style, but it has been cut short many times. And in being that short, his interpretation of that, and make the joke about G.I. Jane 2, could have been in good humor. Which is why I think Will Smith was laughing, because if you look at the video showing them, he was laughing until he saw her face. So he took the joke. He wasn't upset with it until he saw her with the look on her face of kind of like upset. She was like, hurt feelings. So then what happened was, the next thing you see is that he goes up on stage, walks up to Chris Rock, and Chris Rock says, "Oh, here he comes." And then Will Smith slaps him. That's what seemed to have happened. First of all, what happened for me is that Will Smith crossed the line, because my feeling was, as a masculine man, defending the honor of your partner, absolutely. How you defend it is key. Chris Rock did not attack her verbally or physically. He said a joke. He didn't go and say, you're so bad, or you shouldn't be doing, all this stuff. He didn't give her abuse. He made a joke at her expense, per se, maybe. Again, open interpretation. What he did, or what he could have done, is whether he either wait till Chris Rock got off the stage, or when he got up on stage, go up to him and say on the microphone so people could hear it, "You insulted my wife. I demand an apology." That would have been masculine, would have been very blunt. It would have given Chris Rock a choice. And he could have said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." That would have satisfied the requirements, and then Will Smith could have gone back and sat down. No harm, no foul. That isn't what happened, though. And so, and what also was interesting, watching the sides people took, both the celebrities and the media.
Yeah.
In that context, Chris Rock was the bigger man. He didn't file charges, and he basically moved on. Now, I'm giving you a piece of the puzzle. For me, the thing is that violence, as we both talked about, isn't really the solution unless you have to go there. If someone had attacked if someone had attacked my wife, then hell yes, I would be violent in return. Like they're physically attacked, I would do my best. I'd hope to step in and protect her. But if someone just said something out of alignment one time, that was an upset, I would have basically either given him an insult in return or said, apologize. But the thing is, the backstory is that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith's relationship has not been straightforward and clean for the last 20 plus years. They've had their issues. They've also had an open marriage at some points. They've also had, I won't say cheating, but they've had extramarital relationships as well along the way, apparently. So his stepping up, I believe, may have been predicated on a lot of history and of a perhaps desire to change the narrative. So I think maybe what drove him to do what he did was based upon saving face on something that's already happened. Perhaps. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. And I'm not saying necessarily it was right or wrong, just saying that I believe that violence isn't the answer and the solution, especially when you're on camera.
Yeah.
The problem now, because Will Smith has got a lot of big following. He's a very well-known celebrity. He's well loved by many people. And many young boys watching him do that might think that's okay. And even though he's apologized to the Academy and now on Instagram, he apologized to Chris Rock, which he didn't do in his speech, was interesting.
Yes, I know, right?
That was like, okay, you don't apologize to the guy you hit?
He obviously at that point still felt that he was justified in what he did.
Right. So the thing for me, that whole piece is, especially now, I would strongly hope that what Will Smith does now is do a video on all the platforms to let young boys know what he did was an error in approach. Not just saying I was wrong, I did something I shouldn't have done. It's like, what I did, I don't recommend you do. I crossed the line, or whatever that was. You can say it in a very self-honoring way still, but I hope that he's letting his audience know not to do what he did. They didn't give permission to other people to do that, because otherwise it might become a trend, which I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, I think a few people made some interesting comments on this as well. Like they were like, what if the host was a woman, right? Or, if there was any other scenario, right? Would people have reacted the same way? When I first saw it, my first instinctual reaction was that I was in favor of Will Smith. But then, I was probably still half asleep at that point when my wife told me what happened, right? So I was kind of like, yeah, good on him, right? but I'm a fan of both. And then I watched the scenario, and actually I switched. And I was, I completely switched sides. Not switched sides. I think that's the wrong way to put it. Switched my opinion of the outcome of what happened. Like you said, I don't think it was right that he slapped Chris around the face. I don't think that was ever a wise decision to make. And I don't condone violence as well. I won't do it unless I'm protecting someone, who's vulnerable to harm. That's the only time it's ever going to come out of me. But what was interesting, I don't know if you picked up on this, but when he was swearing at Chris while he was sitting down, I don't know about you, but I've seen, unless it was acting, but I've seen that expression before in other people, and I sensed a lot of other frustration was coming out there. I sensed that because of all that's said about his wife and her, recent marital affair and so on and so forth, I got a sense a lot of frustration was coming out there. as well, a little bit of ego and pride that had been hurt and dented. So I think some of that was also emerging too. And
Yeah.
like you said, he laughed and then he changed his opinion, right? Because it was like almost to save face in a way. So I don't know. I mean, none of us are ever going to know the absolute truth, but that's the kind of sense I picked up on from that as well.
Yeah. And what's done is done. But the thing is, again, the challenge we have is we have celebrities we believe are showing us the right way to be. So that scenario has become now indelibly stamped in the memories of so many people. What do we do with that?
Mm.
That's the question. And
Yeah, and I mean, Chris Rock is. like I said, I'm a fan of both gentlemen, and I recently read Will Smith's book as well. So I read the whole book. What I think is going to be challenging or interesting as well, because obviously Will Smith has been heralded as quite an inspirational figure in many ways as well. A lot of people share clips of his little videos and motivational
absolutely.
tidbits and so on and so forth, right? But when you've seen someone then behave this way, and don't get me wrong, we all struggle from time to time, but to lash out in that way so publicly as well, then I
Yeah.
think it can be very damaging as well. So I think from here on out, I think it's going to taint that image. I think people, if moving forward from there, if I see another video of Will Smith telling me how to live my life, I'm going to be like, hang on a minute, mate. Live what you teach as well. Otherwise, it's gonna hold less water for me. It's gonna hold less ground for me. So I think from that perspective as well, I think it's gonna harm his identity of all the
Well,
good stuff that he's done.
yeah, I would say because again, he made the apology on Instagram, which was inclusive of Chris Rock this time.
Yeah.
Said, and I think I agree with what I said too. Same thing is that I believe there's more going on than what we just saw in that moment, like the history that's in there.
Yeah.
If he did a come to Jesus video, like just saying like just so you know, there was a lot of human stuff that led to this moment, and I really I blew my top with that, realizing, and I like that sort of level of communication, ownership.
Mhm.
That would be more restoring him back to being a leadership model because he demonstrated his vulnerability and his ownership of his own stuff. Because the apology is an ownership.
Yeah.
The actual act, like what I did was this, what was going on was this, explaining what happened and what may have been leading up to that with the family dynamics. Not say air your laundry in public, but to own that could be much more of a vulnerable but also respectable position to be in.
I wonder if Chris Rock also was quite forgiving and understanding of what happened because of his own experience as well, because of what he's been through. So
That's the thing is, I mean, it's interesting. It's the other part also. The fact that Will Smith had enough forethought to slap him versus punch him, because that's
yeah.
another thing. The fact he slapped him has different meanings as well. Because if he went up there and punched him, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting. It's like there's a lot to unpack again, and so we don't know the whole story. But just the sense of what was presented, what do we do with that? For anybody, for all of us watching, we've got to decide. Like you were saying, your value of Will Smith's message has gone down a bit because of what he did on stage. A lot of people might be feeling that. But the question is, do we do that when someone makes a mistake? How do we then go forward? Maybe you go find some other heroes to follow. This is the challenge of having the popular media be such a powerful model that we follow. That's the other thing about social media is like we follow the leaders who are usually stars and celebrities, and our stuff we have with sports figures. There was a whole thing in America with a football player, the Cleveland Browns, who are a football team, just have a new quarterback came in with a massive contract who's got like 10 allegations against him for domestic abuse.
Well,
Or
okay.
sexual abuse, excuse me. It's women. The NFL has a whole cadre of issues about masculinity and again machoism with football players who don't respect women. They protect them, they hide them, they don't take note of what's happened. Same with politicians. So as a culture, certainly in America, I'm sure the same thing in England too, we have a lot of comeuppance to have about how men own their space, but also start to disavow the macho way of doing things, which is hurting other people.
Well, I think you've ended on a sort of a really good. We're rounding off on a really good note as well, and I think that just based on what you said, the last point about this kind of paradigm we live in, where we've got this culture of
Mm-hmm.
where women have risen up, but equally we are, for want of a better phrase, tarnishing this ideology of masculinity. But
Mm-hmm.
what would you say to all masculine individuals out there about their role in making sure that we send the right message to people out there? What do you think is the best next steps for us?
We're finishing up on that.
Yeah, I should have
So,
started on this.
well, I think the first thing, two words that came up for me, one was honesty and transparency. We as men, as masculine, men who embody masculine energy, we have, because we don't look different on the outside, it's the inside where we're changing. We need to basically present who we are as masculine men. The default women think of as men as like, you're the guy whose penis is just running around impregnating things. We don't actually have qualities beyond that for a lot of times. And because women have been hurt by men in the past, generally, I mean, some men have been hurt by women too, but in terms of the abuse has gone from men towards women, as we repair and as women get empowered and inspired, thankfully, then our role as men is to honor that, respect that, and as you were saying before about protecting it, is that we start to show other men that the only way to be around women is from a masculine respecting place, to honor that space. So being transparent about that and being honest and sharing what's true for us. And also the other part is, one of the things about masculinity is we find brotherhood with other men. The macho doesn't do that very well. The macho might find guys to hang out with, but the masculine finds brotherhood. So the more we can embrace each other as men and find friendship and support with each other, that can help us too.
I think that's a beautiful way to end, actually. What you just said, I think, is so powerful, because one thing I've seen a lot of is that men don't have that community around them with other men. They don't have that support, and it is very surface level. It is very, all right, mate, slap on the back. How you doing? Everything all right? Yeah, all good. Yeah, that's that kind of thing. But, I mentioned it earlier that on Tuesday evenings, my friends and I, we usually play poker, and it's a great place. We all just have the proper lads chat, but also are able to open up and just talk about if we're having a bad day or something is going on with any of us, and we can actually open up and talk to each other and support each other as well.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I've known these guys for 20 plus years, and there are days we piss each other off and days we argue like brothers as well. And this is what it exactly is. We are brothers. We are literally like brothers. There are days we just won't speak for a couple of weeks because we've just annoyed the hell out of each other. But that's just, I think, a symbol of our closeness, that we are like brothers more than just like friends. But I genuinely do wish that for people, that especially men out there who are feeling very isolated, and it's something I'm seeing more and more of, that we need male leaders to come forward. And I'm not talking about world leaders. I'm just talking about men who are willing to create communities for their fellow man, just so that they have somewhere, a safe space as well for them, because that's something that's lacking at the moment. I think one of my my wife's cousin, he started a group called the I don't know if you know Michael McIntyre. He had this one skit about the man draw. And so he created a Facebook group called the Man Draw Discussions. But the Michael McIntyre did this great skit about the man drawer, that every man has this drawer that has, like keys that don't even fit in anything anymore. They've been there for like 20 years, batteries you don't even know they work. And, it was just the way he did it. It was, if you get a chance, go on YouTube. Anyone listening to this, go check out Michael McIntyre, the man drawer skit. It's just hilarious. But I think we as men do need this. And I think that it's going to involve a lot of men coming forward and creating groups that help support the fellow men, and so that we all influence each other to grow and be better masculine men.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Barry, it's been lovely. You're the first person I've had as a repeat guest, actually, as well. So this is a nice, it's a nice little milestone as well. But it's always a pleasure having you on. I could just listen to your voice, so I could just sit here and just let you talk.
That puts me on the spot.
Tell everyone where they can find you as well, and how they can connect to you, reach out to you if they want to speak to you at all as well.
Sure. Basically, the good thing is all my social media and my website is my name, which is Barry Selby. So barryselby.com is my site. And apart from Instagram, every single platform I'm on is Barry Selby, from Facebook to Twitter to YouTube. I have 1,400 videos on YouTube you can watch if you want to follow my, check out my stuff for free. Instagram is the real Barry Selby, because the original account got hacked. So definitely follow me on Instagram, because I do post ideally informative, sometimes provocative posts. But if you want to connect to me on website, on the front page of my website, you can get on my email list at the bottom of the screen. At the top of the screen is a little connection button to have a conversation with me. So if you want to get direct support coaching from me, you can find me there. And I just set up this weekend, inspiration from a friend of mine, a Patreon page where people want to sign up for a monthly membership to get questions answered for a very low fee, like price of a cup of coffee. That's patreon.com/Barry Selby. You can check that out. It's just a new experiment I'm exploring. So, but yeah, my site's the best place to find me. So,
brilliant. Thank you so much again, Barry. Really appreciate your input and all your wisdom as well. And of course, your amazing voice as well.
It's a pleasure.
If only you could bottle that and sell that on Patreon. I think all you're going to do is just do short snippets and sell that. You'd make loads of money.
Well, I have been invited by a friend of mine to. I have a book on Amazon, by the way, called 50 Ways to Love Your Lover. If you want to go buy it, but I've been asked to do an audio version of the book, so that may be coming at some point. Not promising when, but that's something I'm working on at some point.
It reminds me of Fraser Crane. Hello, Seattle. I'm listening.
I love it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Barry. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to end the live, but to everyone else out there, thank you for watching or listening. And if you're just catching the tail end of this, of course, you can find the podcast on all the major platforms very shortly indeed. But this video will stay up on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other platforms as well. So, Barry, once again, thank you so much. And to everyone else out there, I'll catch you on the next episode of the Feel Inspired podcast. Ciao for now.